Hi, Colt. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast today.
What is up, Jonathan Bell? How you doing?
Not too bad. I'm really glad you're here, and I also would like to let the audience know that Colt is going to be a repeat guest on this podcast. He's going to come on at least once a quarter and discuss all things mental health, which is so important these days, especially with COVID and we've been stuck indoors all this time. I'm sure that's not done any favors for our mental health this year. But yeah, I'm really glad that we've got someone of your caliber on to come on and chat about mental health. Someone that's quite knowledgeable as well. So I'm lucky enough to know you, Colt, but for the audience who don't know you, could you just give your life story and how that's led you to a career in mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks so much for having me on. It's an honor, and yes, mental health is very important. And I have a lot of nuanced views, so I'm hoping this will be a fun conversation. And I'm not going to be speaking from a textbook. I'm going to be speaking from real life experience, but also I'll bring in some of the research too when it's necessary. So I grew up in a very alcoholic environment. I mean, my father was he was alcoholic, and he was not interested in taking care of that. So that obviously has some ramifications. And my mother also dealt with some mental health issues being in that marriage. And so a lot of domestic violence, and had a lot of medical trauma. I had Kawasaki's disease. I had a full blood transfusion as well. And I just struggled with being happy from a very young age. I remember by the time I was 15, my parents had a very traumatic divorce that really affected my brother and myself. And interestingly, when that divorce happened, right away, my mother and father bought us a bunch of video games. So I think from a very young age, we learned how to not deal with our emotions, how to not actually feel the pain of what was going on, as traumatic as it was, and how to numb out with something, video games, right?
Mm,
And and that's nice in the moment, but it's not nice long term. It doesn't actually create an environment of emotional regulation, as I like to call it. So by the time I was 17, I was jumping back and forth between my mother's and father's house, and I was homeless, and I was just couch surfing. And a youth pastor that I used to know when I lived at my mother's house, he decided to pick me up and say, "Hey, man, I want you to live with me." So I ended up going to my third high school. I was 17 years old. And I remember I acted out violently as I had before, gave a kid a seizure, and I got kicked out of that high school. And he said one of
mm,
the most important things to me that I've ever experienced that really was life changing for me. He said, Colt, we're very disappointed in you. This is not something we expected. We took you into our place. But you know what? We thought about, hey, maybe you need to move back into your mom, or you need to move, which was an option actually. So maybe you need to move somewhere else. But we're not going to give up on you. We're going to be in your corner, because I think everyone else has given up on you. And we're going to be here for you and help you graduate high school no matter what. And I had never heard that kind of healthy reinforcement, that unconditional kind of love. And that changed everything for me. I ended up graduating high school. Um, and it was so healing to have that. And then I joined the Marine Corps. And let me tell you, the Marine Corps and I also had a lot of unresolved issues. I mean, I never really dealt with my depression. I had a lot of suicidal ideations, thoughts of dying. Um, didn't really join the military for patriotic reasons. I joined because I needed a mission, and that gave me a mission. So I actually had an eating disorder at age 19 that I developed in the Marine Corps, and that was it's something I wouldn't wish on my enemy. I mean, you have to eat 3 times a day, man. I mean, hopefully,
yeah.
and it's helpful to eat. And I was starving myself. I was overeating, binging, and purging. It was a nightmare, and I dealt with that for 6 straight years. and it also added to my depression, added to the suicide. And by the time I got out of the military, when I was 23 in 2013, I hit rock bottom and I was homeless again. And while I had not acted out violently anymore as I did in my past, I was acting violently within, if you will. I was not
Mm.
very kind to myself. And I remember a social worker told me, Colt, you're not weak for having all these issues that you have. In fact, you're probably stronger than most. You just need the tools. That was another one of those moments, like the youth pastor said to me, like, we're going to be in your corner. She said, I just need the tools, man. And that also was very changed my course. I ended up going to a treatment center in 2013 for about four months, and they gave me an opportunity to, and it was absolutely healing. It was amazing. I loved it. It was so important for me to have that time just to work on myself and to focus on my healing. And I had a therapist say, "Hey, would you like to run a group therapy session with us?" And I said, sure. And it was one of those moments where the kind of everything got oriented really fast, and it felt like I found my calling. I'm
Mhm.
supposed to be in the healing arts, if you will. I'm supposed to be a mentor or a teacher of some kind, and that's what I decided to do. And I went to school, and I got student worker of the year. Everything just kept falling into place, and here I am now speaking to you as someone that knows what they're talking about when it comes to mental health, when it comes to getting out of your way and becoming the best version of yourself. And I have a lot of people think it's not something I ever did on my own, but it's also something that I took responsibility for. And one day at a time, here I am.
That's just an incredible story. And what I really like about it as well is that it's not even my story, but it fills me with hope. Like it's kind of like we've all got some form of trauma or something we need to deal with. Nobody's immune, despite what the Instagram filters say. And yeah, exactly. I mean, and it, what really inspires me about your story is the fact that yes, you did struggle for a long time, but as soon as you found that calling, it was like you said, everything just fell into place and it was just so natural. And now, you're doing something which is, I imagine, incredibly rewarding with a high job satisfaction and probably jumping out of bed that, you get to help people. Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah, man, I can't wait to have for the future conversations we're going to have on this podcast. I think we're going to help a lot of people. I know certainly I'll get a lot out of it as well. I did have a bit of mild depression probably about 6 7 years ago from working 100-hour weeks, so that never
Oh,
helps. I don't
wow.
recommend. Yeah, I don't recommend that. Um, but yeah,
Me either.
thankfully, yeah, thankfully I was fine in the end. It just a little bit of decompression and all was well. But yeah, I have had friends who one in particular who suffered from very very deep depression, and unfortunately he didn't get the help he needed for a long time. He's better now, but he just needlessly suffered. And that's what I'm hoping to avoid in this podcast, at least with the audience. Like, if the audience are hearing this and they know deep down that something's not quite right, or what you said was quite profound, like you really struggled to be happy for a long time. And while I think that's, happiness should not be a permanent state of mind, that would just be unhealthy, despite what, the advertising agencies say. You do need to experience the full spectrum of human emotion. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. And, it's I think it's easy to fall into this trap, isn't it? Of they see the celebrities, or people see that they're not exactly where they want to be in life, and there's all these mind traps that you can fall into. And it's kind of like, well, on this podcast, at least in our episodes, if we can help people avoid that in the form of recognizing there is a problem, even privately,
Yes. Hmm.
getting the help they need. And later on in the episode, we are going to discuss how to find the correct help, getting a good therapist, not just any old
Yeah.
therapist. But that's my mission, at least in on the mental health front, and especially for 18-year-olds. I mean, for me personally, I was thinking about this just before our interview, and if I could give one piece of advice to my 18-year-old self, it would be go to therapy. Like even
Okay.
if even if you think that you're grand and stuff, just having someone to chat to, or go over something that does bother you a little bit. Like we're all going to experience anxiety or depression or something from time to time. So why not have a professional help you through that rather than suffering in silence?
Absolutely. I wanted to go. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you said before, if that's okay, is our stories and bringing hope. Because I've told my story so many times now, and I'm open to do it. I love telling my story. I think it reinforces the work I've done, and it brings. But it's interesting when it does inspire somebody. Like you hear my story, and I'm like, oh, that was inspiring. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad it brought you hope. I think so many of us have stories in us that can bring people hope, and I want to say that pain is pain. Like, don't compare your story to my story. And if people listen to this, say, okay, well, he went through a lot, and I didn't even tell you half of it, really.
Yeah, yeah,
But don't compare it, because man, it's amazing. Sometimes I hear the simplest things of people standing up to their parents for the first time in their life. And that's inspiring, man. That's like, we all know what it's like to kind of stay at that even, what do you call it? The homeostasis, right? Of what our normal is. And then we know it would require courage to expand from that. But just the idea of actually doing it and manifesting that, that's so inspiring no matter what it is. So thank you for telling me that brought you hope, and for telling me why it brought you hope. That was it was encouraging. I'm gonna keep
yeah,
doing it. And I want
yeah.
all of us to do that.
It's it's exactly what you say. Everyone has a story to tell, and
Yeah.
what you said was really good as well. In that, don't compare stories. I know that in mental health there's a comparison trap.
Yeah.
So, one quote that's always stuck with me is, don't compare your chapter 5 with someone's chapter 20, or
Oh, I love that.
yeah, I mean, like it's so easy. Like especially I'm not gonna take digs at social media. I think they're tools and they can be used wisely or badly, but it's
Right.
so easy to go on to your favorite celebrities Instagram or Twitter page or whatever and
Mm-hmm.
see everything you want and then compare it with your own life, and then suddenly you fall into the comparison trap, and it's like, well, you do start to beat yourself up that you're not a certain level of success, or you're not meeting your own expectations or the expectations of your parents or guardians. It's a very unhealthy way to live. It's a very bad way to live, in my opinion. You're not living life to the fullest, or as it should be. But also, I like the example you said of the first time someone stands up to their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Because as much as we love parents, and there are unfortunately parents out there who just, put it frankly, should not be parents. Um, there's certain levels of toxicity. There's also parents who, like, perhaps through no fault of their own, do things or act a certain way and don't realize how harmful that is to their children. You know, and something that, just when you said that, got an example in my head. So this year was the year that, for me personally, I got very, very strict with like personal boundaries. So
Oh
I
wow.
find, yeah. So before, I'm a very chill guy. Now it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
I don't get very much upset or riled up about most things, but at the same time, like for example, in my workplace can be quite stressful, and people within the work environment can occasionally get, I don't want to say nasty, but can be quite blunt and say things that perhaps in later down the line they regret.
Right.
But I always, because it was just water off a duck's back, I would just say to folks, "Oh, he's having a bad day. I don't care."
Yeah. Right.
But at the same time, what I didn't realize was the harm that was doing, in that people then thought it's okay to talk to people like that. It's
Right.
okay to, you know, um, be sometimes quite unprofessional. So this year, when
Mm-hmm.
in both my personal and professional, I've established very clear boundaries. All of
Mm-hmm.
my relationships have improved, every single one
Oh
of them.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in a professional setting as well, where I did have I'll be totally honest, it was a very awkward confrontation with a work
Mm-hmm.
colleague who said something which was quite what's the word I'm looking for? It was quite demeaning, or at least
Mm,
attempted to demean me, because I know my own worth, but
yeah.
attempted to demean. And I very quickly said, that's not on. Don't ever speak to me like that again. Caught him off
Yeah.
guard. And, yeah, he did
Good
apologize.
for
And
you.
yeah, and since then, it's been a very professional, and I don't want to, I wouldn't go as far as say friendly, but we're both on good terms.
Wow.
Now, now for me, that's a big thing in the, as I said before, people saying bad things about me, or I'm not going to get along with everybody, and I neither do I intend to.
Hmm.
It's kind of like there's this insane need to be liked by everyone, and it's like, dude, you don't even like everyone. It's just like,
Yeah.
you know. So for me, it was interesting that the very clear change that's even something so simple as establishing boundaries to protect your my
Hmm.
own mental health has made, and that was such a small actionable step. Um,
Right.
yeah. What about yourself? Is that something you've ever come across and experienced?
Oh, absolutely. I think I wanted to go back to something you said was
Yeah.
about comparison is something Jenny, I love your quote. And I also have another one from Jenny Schaefer. She said, I believe it's from her, is compare and despair. Like when we compare ourselves to other people in general, whether it's your chapter 5 or their chapter 20, it is not going to do a lot. It's not useful. It doesn't serve you well. So compare and despair is something I like to carry with me because, man, what about just taking care, just being okay? Can I just be at okay? Because something else you said is we it's not healthy to try to be happy all the time. It's also not healthy to be sad and depressed all the time, which is somewhere I've been. So let's find that gray area of, I just want to be okay, man. So that's something I've worked really hard on, just being okay. When I'm happy, great. When I'm sad, let's deal with that. Let's feel it. And being okay is a good spot to be. Um, but back to boundaries, yes, I mean that's one of the goals in therapy, I would say, is really clarifying, who am I, who am I really at my core, what am I willing to put up with. And I use the tennis court metaphor. If you've heard that, I don't know if you have. A lot of people enjoy this. It's here am I on my side of the tennis court, here you are, and we have a net. So there's some connection there, right? There's some permeability. However, like we have our side, right? And we want to play a game that works, a game that's it's fun for us and it's good for everyone. People want to watch it.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of times we're playing a game, we're playing relationships that don't work. That's not fun for both parties. In fact, we have some people that even say, you don't even need this net. Screw that. Let me come over here. Let me bring a bowling ball and let's just pretend like we're having fun. And a lot of times us over here, we're like, oh yeah, that's fine. We're having fun. Da, da, da. But you're not. But at least you have somebody, right? And that's what I call enmeshment. It's
Mm,
when you're enmeshed with another, you're not very well defined. Your self is not clear. And that's always draining. I think we've all been in situations when we walk away where we get in our car like, oh, I'm back. Whether it's a date or whatever it is, like I feel like I'm back with me now. So boundaries, I like to keep it real simple, ABC 1, 2, 3, in the sense of the metaphor of tennis, right? So it's
mm,
got to be a game that works for everybody. And you have to start saying, hey, that's an out, I score. Hey, that's an out, you score, whatever, right? You got to start getting real honest and saying that works for me, that doesn't work for me. Hey, that works for me, that doesn't work for me. A lot of people start getting good at what doesn't work for them. And then they
mm,
forget about talking about what does work for them. Oh man, that was a great game because you did this, because you're getting better at serving, because you, right? Like this relationship is working for me because you are asserting yourself. I really like that. And you're doing it in a way that works. You're being tactful. Can you keep doing that? You got to reinforce what works. Otherwise, it's just a punitive relationship. The only time you hear from the other person is when you suck. And and this metaphor, I love it because it's like a sport, right? People like watching a game that works. It's kind of like music, right? If a music's out of tune, or there's I'm not into music too much, but some of those words, it's lacking harmony, right?
Mm.
People are like, "Ugh, something's off here." They don't want to watch it. But when you can really play a game that works, you've seen inspiring couples, right? Inspiring friendships. It's like, wow, that's a why is that inspiring? There's a rhythm to it. There's a chemistry to it. And then we've all seen those relationships where it's like, okay, this is a one-up relationship. This person is being the god here, and this person is just whatever you say, and that's never good to see. So for me, absolutely. I mean, growing up in an alcoholic environment. First of all, does that make sense? That metaphor? What do you think
Oh,
about that?
100%. I think it's great. That's I wish I'd heard that metaphor a long time ago. It would have helped.
Yeah, yeah. Why is it helpful? Because I find it helpful too. I just kind of forget because I've been using it so much.
It's helpful because it's so relatable, especially, you know, when you describe it as, a game that's enjoyable for everybody. Because
Yeah.
how often have we seen friends or been in relationships ourselves that
Right.
we either know is toxic, but it's a relationship anyway. It's better than nothing, so to speak. And then your friends, and then your friends from the outside are like, you know, that's not a healthy relationship from an outside perspective. This is not a good
Right.
game. That we're not enjoying watching this. But
Yes.
it's exactly as you say, when you got genuine, wholesome relationships with family, significant other, or whatever. It
Yes.
is like, people are like I've seen some of my friends in relationships, and I'm genuinely filled with joy inside. I'm like, God, they are
Hmm.
so good for each other. Like, it makes me feel really wholesome, and like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
so happy to see them happy. So
Right.
that's why I really enjoy that metaphor, so to speak, and it's relatable in our own lives. We can That's something you can apply immediately. Like, is this a fun game? Like, is this a give and take relationship, in the professional and the personal setting?
Hmm. Absolutely. Awesome, man. Thanks for explaining that because I'm glad to hear that's helpful. I mean, I've used it a lot, and the type where it's enmeshed. We all know that's not healthy. And then there's another side of that too, where you say, I'm going to blow up the other side of the tennis court. I'm going to blow it up so then I don't have to play with anybody because now I'm assertive. And so, I mean, but that's not fun either. I mean, you're going to play tennis by yourself, and a lot of people end up doing that. They're so sick of being violated. They're so sick of really not enforcing their own boundaries. That's really what it is, violating themselves. And because you have to be in charge of your own boundaries, by the way, it's another conversation.
Yeah.
And so they blow up the other side, and I call that emotional cutoff. Like, no one can get close to me. But really, is
Mm,
that boundaries? If you have no one to actually use your boundaries with, are they boundaries? I say no. And
mm,
so really what we're trying to find is relationships like this. It's a back and forth. It's a rhythm.
yeah.
There's some connection, obviously, but there's that boundary. There's a net. I am me, you're you. I know where I begin, and now I know where I end. I know where you begin, and I know where you end. And that's healthy. So for me, I think that it's so interesting because I think a good therapist will really start at the family. Will start at the root. Not necessarily has to, because it can kind of be inferred, but I think it's helpful because those are our first relationships. And for instance, for me, my first relationship was with an alcoholic father and a mentally ill mother, and boundaries, forget about it. There's no boundaries. It's like, in fact, in those environments, in my environment, my experiences, I had to take care and make sure my dad didn't get too pissed off and my mom didn't get too sad. So if those are my first relationships, then and I develop a role, and I call that role caretaker. We all develop roles growing up, and the
Mm,
role keeps the system, the family going. But as we mature, hopefully, as we mature, we want to start developing our authentic self and get out of that role, because the role is there to keep the family working, regardless of how dysfunctional it is to keep that system working. But as you mature and leave the nest, the hope is that you can self differentiate, you can become more authentic, more individuated from that system and become a self. A lot of times that doesn't happen. So in therapy, what's helpful is we bring awareness. Oh, okay. I am perpetuating my caretaking that I did with my mother and my father, because that's my normal, that's my homeostasis. And so I've actively had to, I'm always going to be a caring person. There's one thing to be caring, and there's another thing to be caretaking. And caretaking is when I put myself on the back burner to make sure everyone else is okay. I take the temperature of the room to figure out who I need to be. That doesn't work. That's not fulfilling. That's always a draining venture.
Mm,
And so I have little by little started with my parents. It's like, hey, look, I'm not going to do this anymore. I am an adult and I'm going to make my own decisions, and you're just going to have to be okay with it. And it took a lot of courage to do that. Interestingly, they responded fine, but I had to do it. Otherwise, I was just going to keep that system going. And I've had to do it with women, because growing up with an alcoholic father, just trying to make sure dad doesn't get too pissed off, and then emotionally caretaking my mother. So I find myself in relationships all the time with women where I don't even know if I like them, but I'm staying in the relationship with them because they like me. Ugh.
mm.
And I would do that over and over again. That's my normal. So that's my comfort zone, but I was never fulfilled, and I was never, so little by little, I've gotten really good at ending relationships, being a good ender, saying no, letting people, like the tennis court metaphor, letting them know like, hey, that doesn't work for me. And,
Yeah.
and it's so amazing how many people really haven't heard that kind of self-respecting language. Like, what do you mean that doesn't work for you? And people are so inspired by that. They're like moved. Like, I want that too. I want to be that way. I want to be someone that says, hey, that's not okay with me. But you know what is okay? This, and this. And so it's been it's been a long journey, and I recommend it. It's actually quite exhilarating and fulfilling, as you've said,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, 100%. You said a few things there I want to touch on, and also something I've never heard of. But it's like when you do build up that courage to establish your boundaries, or admitting I need to see a therapist, or admitting I need help, it's always
Okay.
comes back to one of my favorite quotes in the world from Seneca, and that is, "We often suffer more in imagination than in reality." It's exactly as you said. It took a lot of courage to say that to your parents, and I'm sure you were expecting it to go mad and arguments and stuff, but actually it's went okay. You know,
Yeah.
and it is exhilarating. It is liberating to do that, and it's
Right.
taking those baby steps. Like, you don't have to do something massive. It could be something as simple as going to that jerk in the office who, you know, isn't pleasant to you, and you're saying, "Don't say that. Please don't say that to me again." Like,
Mhm.
go through, like, obviously the professional avenue of, if you are being bullied, you report it. Don't feel guilty for reporting it. But yeah, if there's just someone you don't get along with and they're just not being pleasant, it's take one little baby step and say, "Yeah, I don't appreciate being spoken to like that." You'd be surprised how much taken aback people will be, and will probably be
Right.
like, "Oh crap, I can't. Whoa, that's really caught me off guard, actually." And they probably won't do it again. If they do, then you've got to obviously take that next step, take the next baby step. And unfortunately, if that means like reporting people, so be it, because you've got to be like, take care of your own health, your mental health,
Yeah.
and you come first. Like, again, this is
Yeah.
all about balance. There's a balance between narcissism and taking care of yourself as you deserve. Um,
Yeah.
so, but something you did say that I've never heard. Oh, sorry, were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say something on the idea of people will test you. So I work
Mm,
with people. I mean, they're getting off of heroin and cocaine, and I mean, I've seen some very dysfunctional families, and so there will be families that will retaliate. They will. So I'm just coming from my family's pretty dysfunctional, and they responded. They were like, "Oh, okay. Well, what do we, you know?" But there are some families that, man, they are very toxic and very abusive, and
mm,
they may say okay right away, like okay. However, their homeostasis, for instance, if you're a caretaker, is you being a caretaker. So unconsciously, they're going to keep treating you that way until they realize that that's not you anymore. And so it's at the end of the day, you're the one that has to enforce your own boundaries. And if they keep crossing your boundaries and you're not enforcing it, I enforced my boundaries, Cole. You did it one time.
mm,
You have to know where your line is. What are my standards? What am I willing to put up with and not willing to put up with? When you're in tennis and it's an out and you call an out, yeah, I did. I called an out. I said that's not okay with me, and I score a point there, right?
mm.
Well, you don't do it the next time. What the hell? So it's
Yeah.
got to be something you consistently do. Now, certain things, sure, like you're not allowed to talk to me that way, and they keep talking to you that way, and you tell them again, tell them 3 times, then yeah, go up to HR and bring it to the top side. That's for sure. I'm just want to make a point that if you've been in this role for a long time, you're gonna have to reinforce this consistently, because people will test you. They're used to the Jonathan Bell that they've seen for years, and then now you want to like be self-respecting, you know. And
Yeah.
there could be some people that are absolutely, evil about it, and um, but most people are just used to the old you, and so it's your responsibility to create a new homeostasis for people to know who you are. And that's why I always go back to relationships and knowing your original relationships. If you know that, know thyself, right? Temet gnosis, then you can absolutely, from that insight, be effective moving forward. Otherwise, I'm just going to assert myself, and that can get kind of clunky. So
Yeah. 100%.
anyway,
I really like what you just said there. Know thyself. It's kind of,
oh yeah,
it's kind of like if you know truly who you are and truly what you stand for and what your values are, you know,
yeah,
you'll be self-respecting anyway, because you'll know, well, actually I don't like this, or I don't like being spoken to like that. And yeah, know thyself. I'm gonna repeat
yeah.
that often, I think.
And also, if you know what your dysfunctional self is, for instance, your family system self, your family of origin self, and what that system was like, if you know that, then you can know how to overcome it,
Yeah.
because that will be your knee jerk the rest of your life, perhaps, unless you see it as it is. Oh, my dad was alcoholic, my mom was mentally ill here, da, 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 and they came from that family, and they can't, right? Your family tree. When you can know that, then you can overcome it. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredibly liberating. It's, I mean, like,
yeah.
it's easy to play victim, isn't it? And say there's nothing I can do. This is just the hand I was dealt. But
Right.
it's then easy to, but then it's very difficult to go, okay, I'm no longer going to be a victim. But that's liberating, because it means there's something you can do about it. There is an element within your control, which comes back to what's in your control, your boundaries,
Right.
and it's your personal responsibility to maintain your own mental health. Nobody else is going to do it for you.
Right.
And but something you did say, and this is something I've never heard of before, and you were like, within a family, there's rules. Like that's the rule you grow into, which is very interesting. Which it makes sense now that you've said it. But once you leave the nest, so to speak, or you're ready to take on a new role, to not be the old you, how do you grow into that new role, and how do you find out what that is in a healthy way?
Wow, that's a big question. So I think I'm going to be doing that the rest of my life. Is one of the reasons I reacted that way, because I think we're always growing, we're always evolving, right? We're
Mm,
becoming, as we expand. And let me put it this way: we all need a star to shoot for, right? We need something to orient us. I'm in LA right now, and I want to go to New York, for instance. If I have no aim of going to New York, and I just get on that plane, I'm the pilot, where am I going? I'm just going to,
yeah.
in circles until I crash land in Oklahoma and run out of gas. So I need an aim. I think this is what I value. I think this is important to me. And so I start with that. What do you value? What's important to you? What makes you come alive? And a lot of times people don't address that because they're so depressed, or they're so preoccupied with what so-and-so has that I don't have. I'm like, okay, if you were fulfilled, if you were doing what you loved, what would that be? What would that thing that makes you come alive be? Let's put that star in the sky. And so again, the metaphor of New York, right? That's a direction. That's east from where I'm at. And east isn't something that you can necessarily accomplish, but it is a direction you can align yourself with. And as I zigzag, because there's no straight lines, as a plane never travels in straight lines, constantly making adjustments, I find I get better and better and better at making those adjustments, having that accountability, having that radar system that keeps me aligned. And then as I get closer and closer to the destination of East, or excuse me, the destination of New York, as I'm aligned with East, I find out actually this whole time I've wanted to go to Toronto, But only by going towards something and having something a narrow way was I able to figure that out. And then again, once I get to Toronto, that's a goal within East. Okay, now I want to go to Greenland. Now I want to go to the UK. It's all east from where I'm at, and goals within that. So it really, to me, is about value identification. And if that's simply is what's important to you, what would be meaningful. Because if we're constantly we can all find happiness right now, go to the streets and buy some drugs or whatever, right? We can all find something to make us happy right now. But what about something that would make you meaningful across time? And that requires value identification, and then smart goals underneath that, accountability. And so to answer your question, I would start there, and then little by little, a lot of journaling, little by little, finding who you are is always a process. Executing that is always a process, and it becomes a I am process. And what I mean by that, I don't want to get too esoteric here, but I can if you want me to, is that we have all this content. I'm a therapist. I'm a podcaster. I am. I'm a male, right? All those things are true. As I start crossing those off, or as I help clients as well, they say, I'm an alcoholic. That's helpful when you're driving past a bar. I'm an alcoholic, to call yourself that. Is it helpful when you're in a job interview? I say not.
No, probably
So,
not.
yeah, or when you're in a grocery store, hey, I'm an alcoholic. My name's Colt. No. So, what I try to help people do is to uh, differentiate from content. That's content, and it's helpful when it is. And it's also like, it's helpful that I'm a therapist when I'm right, but it's not helpful I'm a therapist when I'm at a grocery store. I don't start therapizing people. At least I hope therapists don't do that. And so little by little, I've come to this idea of, it's called the self-actualized process, or what I also like to call the phoenix rising from the ashes, right? This constant edification. I'm going here. Here's my homeostasis right now. Here's what I know is important to me, East and New York and this area that way, that metaphor, whether it's joining a band, I don't know, starting a new career. So I have to get outside of my comfort zone. As I do that, I feel like I'm dying. It's super scary, but then I get stronger. I go here, it's another one, right? And really at the crux of all that, the middle of all that, is this I am process. And that's a full sentence. I am, subject, verb, is being. We're human beings. And something about our culture right now that I think is making us sick, if you will, if I may be so frank. And look, we need to be disciplined and have goals and all that, but we're constantly human doing, and we're never actually being. So as I say, stop and smell the roses. Then it's, I mean, what are we doing, man? How are we going to actually enjoy this life and find that balance? So your question is huge. I don't know if I answered it, Jonathan, but that's a start, I hope.
I think it's a phenomenally good answer, and I really like that metaphor because it speaks to me a lot of, you have your values in that general direction of East, but you have the destination of New York, and that perfectly applies to even say this podcast of, okay, I think I want to start a podcast. Okay, yes, I'm going in that direction, and like you're right, going off and then massively outside of your comfort zone, feel like you're dying, reborn. Okay, actually,
Yes.
you know what? I know how the equipment works now. Okay, I've just interviewed my first guest. Okay, I've got my first download. It's like,
Brilliant.
but then it's okay. This is all good. Okay, I've had a massive technical hitch. Okay, that's fine. I've fixed it and I've learned. This constant up and down, which translates really well to what you said even earlier. Of there's no straight lines. It's a very messy process. There's no perfect way to do it. It's your own journey, and like, yeah, that spoke to me a lot as well. I like as well what you said about I'm gonna butcher it here. It's like the I am statement. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that I know certainly when I was in therapy, that the I adjusted my core belief and to a more positive one, and it was that I am perfectly able. So I could certainly in future episodes I can go into why that's my new core belief, and but for this one, that's my new core belief that I am competent, and that I'm perfectly able to do all these things that I set my
Mm.
mind to, rather than just assuming they're potentially going to fail.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I liked what you said there in the, I am, and then adjective and verb. So maybe that's even a challenge we could put to the audience. What is your positive I am statement? And let us
Hmm.
know in the socials. And yeah, that's a little bit of audience participation as well, because it's all good us chatting, but unless you, the audience, actually put what Colton is saying into practice, then it's all very well good hearing it, but you need to take messy action. You're not. It's
Yeah,
not going to be
yeah,
perfect.
and a call to action too here with that messy action. Look, I'm coming from the space of acceptance and commitment therapy, right? So this is about doing what works, right? Actually having a life worth living, at least that, let
Yeah,
alone fulfilling and happy. And so, like, let's do what works. And if affirmations work, great. Like, I am a perfectly able person, is what you said, right?
yeah,
I say something to myself: I'm confident, competent, effective, and efficient. I say it to myself all the time because I come from a place where I didn't think that. And that is helpful. And at the same time, it can become draining if we're constantly putting all these, I got to think positive. I got to think positive. It turns into like a fight, right?
yeah,
And so, one of the things I do is I say, use that when it's helpful, and it's helpful a lot. And I am, period, is a complete sentence. So it's also a challenge just to be, because sometimes we know for sure, as you're doing this podcast, Jonathan, haven't you found times when you're not competent
yeah. Oh yeah.
or not perfectly able? Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And
Oh,
that's
preach.
okay. And that's okay. And that's this process of allowing yourself to zigzag, allowing yourself to be, to I am through a process. I've been swimming all summer here in LA. Well, it's not summer anymore, but I did. And I was a Marine. I'm not supposed to be, I'm just barely competent at swimming. I've never been a great swimmer. I have a high bone density, and
Mm,
I made it a challenge. I said, you know what? This is my direction of east. I want to become more healthy and competent in this area of my health. And so my goal is to swim 1,000 yards in the ocean to be aligned with that value, and under this 13 minutes, whatever it was. And man, I was scared every moment of doing it, because not because I'm a bad swimmer, because of sharks. I'll be honest.
yeah.
And they found a 17-foot long shark in that same bay I was swimming in.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there was a lot. Yeah. Anyway, it was scary, man. And I kept quoting that quote from Alan Watts that said, "To live, I must have faith. I must trust myself to the totally unknown."
Mm,
And that right there, that being, trusting myself to life. And look, I might get eaten by a shark. No, I didn't. And it's very unlikely, actually.
yeah.
It's just that might happen. And I can still be in life and do the things that matter to me. And so I am is a complete sentence. And I want to challenge people to be, and when it's necessary and helpful, to use those positive affirmations too. I am perfectly able. That's beautiful, man. So
Yeah. I mean, I have heard of Alan Watts. I do keep meaning to actually read his books and his various things. I have seen a couple of great quotes of him, and I keep going, I need to read that guy's books.
yeah, he's interesting, man. I highly recommend him.
Yeah.
He's
So
he's
something.
liberating.
Oh yeah, 100. I can imagine. So something I do want to have a chat about is what self-care strategies do you recommend, like daily routines and stuff like that for people? Because I think that we go like mental health is this kind of thing we put to the side. It's not really a priority, and then we wonder why we feel terrible. I'm not gonna say consistently, but how do we maintain that balance of consistent good mental health, uh, through whatever routines and basic self-care that you could recommend?
I'll start with this. Reduce screen time. I mean, you will watch the movie The Matrix
Yeah.
when you
Oh,
have some
great movie.
downtime. Yeah, this thing is turning into The Matrix, man. Like we are scrolling, looking at Instagram models, and the porn that you can look at just by a click is incredible. I mean, it's insane how many distractions there are just
Yeah.
from this thing. We're turning into cyborgs. And I don't want to dig onto this too much because it's a wonderful tool. How amazing is this? And we got to watch to make sure that we don't become a tool to the tool. And I don't know. I have tried to stay away from being too critical about social media and about our phones. But the more I've dug into the research, the more that I've allowed myself to be a little more cynical about it because it's getting pretty bad. And just from being a human being in the world, you can tell it's not that healthy what it's turned into. So I would make an attempt, find an accountability partner, use um, that tool on iPhones or whatever your smartphone device is, where it shows you how much screen time you're using, and try to reduce that. And don't just try to reduce it, try to replace it with some healthy activities every day. Um, that might mean, okay, I know that reading would be good for me. So let me actually do that. Even if it means I'm going to reduce my screen time by 10 minutes a day. Let's just start there. Start so small. So when it comes to self-care in general, take baby steps, because if you can consistently, people struggle with being a man or woman of their word. Just start being consistent. I remember when I struggled to get back into working out, I just started with doing a pull-up routine, um, sets of 5 every other day, and just being consistent with that for a couple months. I ended up going back in the weight room, and I built upon it, and just be consistent. The next thing I would say with that idea of reducing screen time and taking baby steps and making little small promises, easy to do, easy not to do, is get your circadian rhythms in check. I mean, we live in a world where the sun never goes down, lights, right?
Yeah.
And we have video games, and I don't want to sound like the old man on the porch here, but we don't know how to sleep it anymore. And it's so important to get your sleep right. And I'm talking 8 hours. Have a consistent schedule. This is my bedtime. This is my wake time. Well, that's so juvenile. That's for kids. Okay. And that's how we lived for thousands of years, by the sun. The
Yeah.
sun goes down, I go to bed. The sun goes up, I get up. We don't have a sun anymore because of electricity and because of electronics and because of all these distractions. You need to discipline. You can choose to discipline. You don't have to do any of this. You can choose to discipline yourself to a sleep schedule and to make it consistent. And again, that's not easy. However, it's so important, man. And I stopped drinking coffee just to keep myself that much more. And I'm not saying you need to do that. It's personal choice. Just keep myself that much more honest with how rested I am and how my sleep is. And I actually hired a coach to help me with self-care for a while. And that's the first thing he started me with, was getting my sleep right. And that made a huge difference. Um, going to bed at 11, waking up at 7:30. And that's just treating your life like a business. That's when I close business, and that's when I open business. Um, Other self-care stuff. I mean, the obvious stuff, right? I mean, exercise. Just start small, man. Um, I think it's super important to make sure that we're not compensating and trying to. Um, I mean, there's some great material out there right now. Some great, amazing motivational videos. Jocko's great, right? Discipline equals freedom. Discipline equals freedom. Discipline equals freedom. It's great. It's wonderful. I would watch out for the trap of that, though, and make sure that in the spirit of self-care and being someone, tortoise not the hare, right? Like slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
Just win the day. Do the things that are necessary, the 4 or 5 things that you need to do in one day that move the needle forward of your goals. I did enough. Now I can relax. Now I can have the day that I would want. Start creating the day that you would want, not a schedule that you whip yourself with and you berate yourself with for not completing. Have those 4 or 5 disciplines that get done every day, and then find the thing, and then go live your day. Go hike the mountain. So, I mean, obviously health and drink water, the stuff that we all know, we all freaking know what to do. If we were a life coach right now, we had to help someone get better, we know what they need to do. Do those things. Treat yourself like the character in a video game. Kind of be the fly on the wall. Okay, it's time to get up now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's time to drink water. It's trying to have my meal. And are you overworking yourself? That's something I struggle with a lot. I still struggle with. I have accountability. It's like, okay, Cole, are you overworking again? Are you trying to do too much? And because of the environment I grew up in, I constantly think that I constantly have to keep my eye on knowing myself and know that I'm going to try to put way too much on my plate to make up for lost time or to get people to love and like me. But at the end of the day, I got to love and like me. And if I don't have that right, then it's all for naught.
Yeah. That thing you said right at the end there, where um, you put too much in your place, and sorry about that, just a distraction.
Oh, it's
Sorry.
okay.
The thing you said right at the end there, that the example of working too much, and that has always been a problem I have of working uh, too much on my plate. And even with this podcast, it's like I set myself a date that I'm going to have this podcast up and running by January 4th is launch day. So like over Christmas, I've been working on this like what 5 hours a day, perhaps between interviews, between setting up all the social media channels, YouTube, and various things like that. And yeah, what you just said there is that I definitely could have, in hindsight, got done maybe 1 or 2 hours a day and enjoyed the rest of
Mm-hmm.
my day. Because like,
Yeah.
yes, I'm really glad I got this podcast set up. I'm really glad that we're having this conversation right now and we have the ability to do it. But at the same time, I'm also, it's Christmas time, and there's been times where I just want to sit and relax. I'm like, I can't, because I've committed to this goal. And committing to a goal is a great thing, but at the same
Yes.
time, there's the balance, and that's something that I I definitely now in hindsight going into this new year, I'll find that balance. Because yeah, I
Yes.
would say I naturally work quite hard, but almost to my detriment, perhaps. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, I really liked what you just said there. Um, Something I have heard about that I just wanted to get your opinion on: health mindset. Describe
Mm-hmm.
that.
Health mindset. Can you say a little more?
Just as part of the overall basic self care, daily routines, and then I heard health mindset is part of a part of that as well.
I'm actually not familiar what you mean. Is that like some sort of
I've,
term, health mindset?
perhaps it just means healthy mindset. Yeah, that's just from the basic. That's just from the basic. Like stuff I've read on therapy and stuff. But that's all right. Something we can talk about, which everybody's familiar with in this one, is stigma. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, why
That's
do you think there is stigma, and where does that come from?
stigma. Yeah, it's well, first of all, let's define it, right? Let's define our terms. Stigma is this negative notion about a subject or a entity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about mental health, certainly there is a negative notion based upon that. Certainly in my family, the stigma was that's for crazy people. That's for the lunatics. Lunatics are like mental health isn't something that normal people talk about, and we certainly don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Men need to just suck it up and be, be man. And yeah, so feelings, we don't talk about our feelings. So stigma is huge when it comes to mental health. It's something that is going to keep you from actually opening up and dealing with things in a healthy way. So stigma can be actually pretty toxic and pretty unhealthy in the fact that it doesn't allow us to be verbalizing what is true. And a lot of times it comes from communities, it comes from, um, you open up about your feelings and people, will look at you like, right?
Yeah.
So it's understanding that stigma and finding people that are open. Well, first of all, the fact that we're talking about it right here and we're open about it is a huge deal. I mean, are you familiar with Andy Frisella?
Yes, I've heard of him, but I'm not familiar with his work.
Yeah, he has a podcast, and it's pretty good. He's pretty crass and pretty open, and he doesn't seem like someone that would be open about his feelings, but he absolutely is. He talks about how he's been struggling with depression his whole life, and he's dealt with that his whole entire life, and he's freaking open about it, man. And by him doing that, especially character at his stage and how many people look up to him and how many people follow his podcast, they are, it's very inspiring, and it really does help reduce stigma that someone at that caliber would open up about that. So, I mean, reducing stigma and overcoming stigma is a choice. It's really a process of being vulnerable enough to say, "Hey, I'm struggling. I'm not doing okay." And some people will reject you and perpetuate that stigma, and that's unfortunate. And then again, there's people that will absolutely, like that social worker that said, "You're not weak for having these issues. You just need some tools." And so really defeating stigma and is first of all knowing what it is, and then little by little opening up about it and finding the people that will support you in what is true for you. This is true, and I need help. Same with you, right? Like I'm dealing with this. I need to see a therapist. And so
Yeah, that's that's really good. I know certainly when I went to see a therapist 6, 7 years ago for mild depression as it was diagnosed. I mean, like I was suffering for a long time needlessly. It just got to the point where rather silly, it got to the point where
mhm,
like I was not in a good place and that, I just wasn't enjoying all the things I normally do and my relationship suffered. And then I go, well, I'm suffering now. So the only thing I can do is ask for help and hopefully the suffering stops. In which it did. And it got resolved very quickly because,
mhm,
I managed to put the ego aside, put the pride aside and accept, this is bigger than me.
mhm.
I need to, it's I finally sort of got around to doing it because I was like, if I had a broken leg, I can't man up against a broken leg. I can't just say, this is fine. You keep trying to walk on a broken leg, it's not going to, do you any favors. And the
Right.
longer you leave it, the worse it gets, and the longer it's going to take to heal. So
Mhm.
for me, in the end, again, comes back to what I would have said to my 18-year-old self, and just go to therapy sooner. You know, and I really like what you're saying because it's so relatable. It's so like we've all felt that pressure one way or another, whether it be peer pressure or the fear of judgment or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's I think we're doing well as a society. I think nowadays if, you said to the people who care about you, oh, I'm actually suffering from depression or anxiety, I think we're at that stage now where people will go, oh, what can we do to help? But just as
Yeah.
you said, there are people who will reject that and maintain that stigma. But then that could probably be a good filter for should these people really be in my life.
Right.
It's like surround yourself with the people who have your best interests at heart. And I'm quite fortunate in I've got a lot of good friends and family that if I did say that, I'm sure they would all say, "Yeah, we're here to support you." And I would hope that they would feel comfortable talking to me, saying, "Actually, do you know what, mate? I am struggling a little bit," and it's like, "Well, I'm here for you, dude."
Yeah.
Um. So yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, we have gotten rid of stigma on a personal level, but I don't think we've gotten rid of the stigma of saying I'm seeing a therapist. I don't know what it's
Right.
like in the States, but certainly over here in the UK, in Northern Ireland, we are quite, I want to say, reserved. It's not, you don't air your problems, you don't admit or, that things aren't quite as good as they could be. It's the same conversations we always have. How's things going? Oh, great, great. How's work? Just working away. Um,
Yeah, just working
uh,
away.
yeah, just working away. Or that famous one. Oh, how you feeling? Tired, just tired.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
so what in your opinion, what can we do to further reduce this stigma, especially the right how do we normalize it to the point where saying I'm seeing a therapist is no different to saying I'm going to see the dentist or a doctor?
Well, it's a it's a tough one. I don't know if I have the answer, but I have some opinions. And
Mm,
I think one of the things I would like to say is that, yeah, in California, Southern California, where I live, it's people aren't gonna like be like weirded out if you say I have a therapist, you know. However, it's still kind of weird, you know.
yeah.
I don't know. And honestly, one of my critiques of my own field, if I may be so blunt, is that look, I think it's going to be better to not try to do this journey on your own. It's going to be better to try to bounce some ideas off of somebody. It's better to do that than not and isolate. Isolating is not the idea. We're social beings. We need each other. And so therapy can be an amazing option. I think because it's such an important thing to do. You're going to therapists to get better, to feel better, to do more workable things in life. And when you go see a dentist and they're incompetent, it's like, oh, screw that guy. I'm gonna go find another dentist. When you go see a therapist, it's so emotionally vulnerable to go do that. And you find someone that doesn't fit. I say going to the therapist is like trying on shoes. And sometimes they don't fit. It's not a good
Mm,
fit for you. And then okay, therapy's stupid. Therapy is they don't know what they're doing. They don't really care. And that might actually be true. There might be someone in the therapy field that are just incompetent fools. But that doesn't mean that the next therapist down the street wouldn't be a really good fit and really helpful for you. So I think it adds to the stigma that we're so quick to be highly critical towards therapists. And I think it's for a good reason. I think I get it because it costs money. It takes a high amount of vulnerability. But I wanted to say that, like, go try out a couple more. Try interview therapists before you just decide on one. Go to this one, that one, this one, and figure out which one's the best fit, and then hire that person. They work for you, right? You're their customer. Like, you hire them to help you, and maybe they're not a good fit. So I would say be pickier on who your therapist is. Because when we just like, oh, therapy doesn't work, it's for the birds, that definitely adds to stigma. Because I mean, how many therapists did you actually try? Let's start there.
yeah.
um, just like a dentist, just like a lawyer, just like, a car, you don't just buy the first one you see, you know,
Yeah.
because the car could be a lemon, or it could just be the fact that it wasn't a good fit.
That's really
So,
interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've actually never heard it that way. Interview your therapist. Don't, I must admit that uh, I think the reason that it's so hard to potentially do something like that is you're right. It's a very emotionally vulnerable place to be,
mhm.
and you seldom would open up to your doctor like that or your dentist. In fact, you never would. But
No,
it's quite a unique situation when you are bearing your
yes,
soul to someone, and you're 100% right. It needs to be the right person. It needs to be a good fit. I was
yeah,
quite fortunate that the therapist I have is just great, like fantastic.
awesome,
Yeah, really, really good. We're a great team. Um, but staying on the subject of therapy, and I want to talk about the power that therapy has to really change lives. And, taking that first step into it is always terrifying.
yes,
You're peeling back the curtain and letting someone see the real you and your real thoughts and emotions, and not the Instagram filter that you put up.
hmm,
And especially if that's the first time you're ever doing it, you know.
hmm,
Um, so take us through, in your opinion, the power that therapy has to change lives.
yeah. Well, it absolutely can, especially if you find the right fit. Let's assume you actually found the right fit, right? You didn't just take the first one because it's the closest therapist to your house. And if that does happen, they're a good fit, awesome, like in your case. So, assuming it's a good fit, therapy can absolutely change your life because any therapist that's worth their salt is going to, first of all, help you understand yourself. They're going to help you understand oh, that's why I am why. That's why I do that, right? And the more you understand that, again, the more you can overcome it. You can know who you are, know your patterns, know your knee-jerk reactions, and therefore start creating a plan to overcome it. Another thing that's so life-changing is not only that, but exposure therapy. I mean, that is what I specialize in. You know, if you have a snake phobia and you're afraid of a snake, you can literally overcome that phobia in about 3 hours. And the way we would do that is we have a consenting individual that decides, okay, I want to get overcome this snake phobia. And okay, sign the dotted line. Let's get through this thing. And we would have them enter a room with a non-poisonous snake, and I would hold it, for instance, and they would walk in the room and they're crying. They're like, oh, this is terrible. And I'm like, okay, walk out. They'd walk out. About 5 minutes, they come back in, they get a little closer. They're crying, they go out. By the end of 3 hours, they're holding the snake. They named it Henry, and they don't have a snake, and they don't have a snake phobia anymore. It's incredible. It's almost miraculous. Same with death anxieties, and I'm afraid of elevators. I'm afraid of heights. Literally, I will take clients. I'm afraid of social interactions. I've taken clients outside, and we've walked around and talked to random strangers just to show them that they're not going to die, because fear tells us that we can't handle it. But every time you overcome the thing that you fear, you find I can handle it. So feel the fear and do it anyway. So a good therapist is going to, or it depends on what your situations are, right? If it's depression, if it's anxiety, whatever it is, they're going to help you show that you can handle it, that you can feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's how you capitalize. That's how you grow as a person. And that's why it's therapeutic. It's therapeutic. I feel better. I feel stronger because within these issues that I have, because I'm a human being, I have issues. I'm not perfect. I don't have everything all together. I can become stronger in the context of that. So maybe it doesn't ever get easier, but I become stronger regardless of the things I struggle with. And that's powerful, man. And obviously the flip side of that would be a therapist that constantly tries to protect you and constantly tries to keep you from feeling like you're in danger. No, that's not therapy. So again, assuming it's a competent therapist and it's a therapist that fits for you, they're going to actively help you handle the things that you're afraid of expanding into. Because again, if you know thyself, you know your homeostasis. Anytime you try to get out of that, you want to self-sabotage and keep it simple right here. The therapist is like, no. Let's take some baby steps and go, what? No. Let's go. You said you would do that this week. And then next week you build upon that. Next week you build upon that. And next thing you know, you're a whole nother person. You can't even recognize the you that was you a year ago, depending on what you're in therapy for, of course. So again, just knowing thyself, knowing who you are so you can overcome that. And then finding that way to exercise courage and commit yourself to the actions that are in line with your values little by little over and over. And so therapy can be so freaking powerful, man.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, that just blew my mind. Really did.
How come?
Just like even like like the exposure therapy, somebody coming into the room and 3 hours later they're holding a snake and for goodness sake they've probably gone down and bought a pet snake or something. Um the um the example as well that really stood out to me that you just said was that perhaps the phobia or the thing that you're really struggling with will always stay the same, but you'll get stronger. That one there, that was like, wow, like
Yeah.
because I think people will use that excuse of oh, I'll never get over this, or this pain will be always as bad as this. It's like, okay, if that's the constant, what can change you? And through that, taking one baby step at a time, you become stronger and stronger and stronger. So yeah, whatever the thing is, it's there, but it's not the master of your life. You are. And
Yeah.
you become stronger and stronger and stronger to the point where you go, yeah, that was a part of my life, or it is, but it plays such an insignificant role that it doesn't bother me anymore. I
Yes.
mean, yeah, just everything you said in that little block, my mind was going, whoa. It's like,
Buddha. I mean, this is what the religious people have always said. This is what philosophers have always said. I mean, honestly, to be honest, I think one of the reasons why sometimes psychology gets a bad rap is because sometimes we're not philosophical enough. I certainly am. And I think that's why I've been so helpful to my clients, is because I come from a philosophical angle, a
Mm,
metaphysical angle, and I help people become the hero of their own story. And it's like, dude, that dragon, there's always going to be a dragon. And what you want to never be afraid of a dragon, you're not going to not be afraid of a dragon. The battle must be fought anew each day. And on the field of a self, there's a knight and a dragon. You are the knight, resistance is the dragon. The battle must be fought anew each day. That's Stephen Pressfield that said that. And
yeah.
so I I try to tell clients, hey, when your trauma erases from your memory one day, I'm gonna say amen, hallelujah. Or when it's quieter one day than it is other days, okay, we'll take that. But let's not even count on it going away. Let's count on you getting stronger one day at a time, so that you become so strong that that suffering becomes irrelevant. Buddha said life is suffering. However, if that's default, then if you can make your life so meaningful, if you can become so strong, it makes the suffering irrelevant. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that resonated with you.
Yeah, 100%. I really like that you just said as well. Another
Yeah.
dragon story that I think Jordan Peterson said this was that, and I'm going to butcher his quote, basically that, the dragon is always there, but it's better to go to its lair and deal with it before it comes to your village. You know,
Oh,
if you,
I love
yeah,
it.
yeah, you keep putting off that therapy that you need, or you keep putting off, that thing that you need to deal with. Quite frankly, it's going to show up in
Yes.
your life and it's going to ruin it. It's going to
Yeah.
cause a lot of havoc, unnecessary pain and suffering. So as scary as it is, it's better just to get on the field of battle, face it, charge it, deal with it, beat it back for another day, or until the point where that dragon is now just mute. It's like, what is this thing? I'm not even bothered by it. It's there.
Yeah.
It's never going away. So just conquer it. You know.
Yeah.
Uh, so I really like that. You talked a little bit about finding the right therapist and one that's going to fit. How do you do that? How do you find a therapist that is A, competent, uh, and B, will work with you as a team to get you through your goals, won't protect you, as you have I got that right, that they're not there to protect you, they need to expose you, so to speak, to your fears. So what do you look for, and why is finding any old therapist detrimental?
Yeah. Finding any old therapist could actually do more harm than good in some cases, because it can be enabling. Like, they are there to, I mean, we can all get into a field because we have the great intentions, and then we end up being kind of like, all right, here's another person. I'm going to help them feel validated all day. And
Yeah.
if you've never been validated, that can be very healing and powerful. Don't get me wrong. Like, okay, now there's someone finally listening to me. My whole life, no one listens, no one, so that can be very powerful. But if that's all the therapy is, it's just, I'm going to validate you all day and not help you, push you towards your edge and push you towards, well, maybe your edge is being I am, like we were talking about, just being. Maybe it means you actually going towards that woman that you've always wanted to date, but you don't think you're worthy. Well, let's actually make a plan that you actually do that. Right. But if we're not doing that in therapy, then what are we doing, man? So I would say look out for that. And even one way to vet for these things is to, like I said earlier, actually interview them, ask them um, what their school of thought is, what their methodology is, what are they doing in therapy. And if cat caught their tongue, that's a sign. And if you're a caretaker, don't excuse that. Say, okay, thank you. I think I'm gonna go a different direction, or just tell them I'll call you back, which we all know what that means.
Oh yeah.
So I would say do your homework before. I would say definitely look for someone that is familiar with the exposure therapies, right? The analytics, someone that is, because if they are actually there to help you overcome PTSD and chronic depression and suicidality, I guarantee it's not going to be all about validation. It's going to be a lot about becoming stronger in the face of that. And don't set them up with that answer. See if they give you that answer. Don't
Yeah.
say, hey, are you here to help me get stronger? Don't say that. Ask them, so what is your philosophy on helping me get better? Right. And when you challenge some therapists, some of them will get defensive.
Yeah.
There's a sign to walk
Okay.
away. If they're getting defensive, then they're not there to actually be a team with you.
Yeah.
They may actually be there to tell you that that they know best for you. And let me tell you, a therapist that says they know you better than you know you, run, get away, run. They can only give you their best guess. The job of a therapist is to legitimately, at the end of the day, to help remove obstacles. So, I'm noticing this, Jonathan. I'm noticing that whenever I bring this up, you just say, I don't know all the time. But I'm wondering how I don't know serves you to stay the same versus helps you become a better version of you. That's an obstacle that I hear all the time. I don't know. I don't know. Well, what if you stop saying I don't know and you actually try to figure out what the issue actually is, right? That's an obstacle that I
Yeah.
just helped you remove.
Yeah. That is, yeah, well spotted. I will have to stop doing that. Yeah.
Oh,
I,
actually, I don't actually, I've never heard you say that. I'm just using that as an example.
yeah, yeah. I have said that before. I used to be really bad at it. I'm not nowhere near as bad as I was, but yeah,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, it's just that's why it's like pure chance you just happened to straw on it. I was like, oh gosh, do you read my
Yeah.
mind? You
I'm
know
not
me before?
clairvoyant. No. Like I said, I don't know you better than you know you. I just made a guess. No, but yes. So I would say that it could definitely be detrimental, and to choose a therapist and interview them means that you've done your homework, and don't be afraid to put them on the spot. This is their freaking job, man. Like if they're not competent, if they're not going to give you what you need, fine. And by the way, maybe a therapist gave you what you needed for the first 5 or 6 weeks, and you evolved enough through that now it's time to retire them as your therapist and hire a new therapist. You grew out of them because they were there to help you with that issue, but they can't really help you to this next issue because they don't have the skills for whatever reason. That's just not their area of expertise. So, for instance, I don't think I'd be very good at. Let me think. EMDR. You know what that is?
I'm afraid not. No.
Yeah, I'm afraid not either because I don't know. I'm not into it's essentially helping. It's eye movement desensitization therapy, and I don't know much about it, but that's just because I don't know. So I'm not your therapist. If you really believe in that form of therapy, it's kind of like a hypnosis type of therapy, if you will. I'm just not into that. I'm not trained in that area, so I'm not into hypnotism. So go to someone else that is into that. I'm more into the pragmatics, into helping you become a better version of yourself through committed action, through alignment with your values, through knowing who you really are, being in contact with the present moment, diffusing from thoughts, and accepting the pain and the discomfort through all of that.
Wow. That's pretty good. Something that surprised me there was that you can outgrow a therapist. That that they've helped you with this stage of healing. Okay, now it's time to move on to the next one. I always thought with a therapist, right? That's it. You're with them until you're sorted, so to speak, if that's the correct way to put it, or not even sorted, but you're a little bit better than you were. So that's an interesting one that you can outgrow a therapist. I think that'll catch a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, I think you absolutely can. Like you can outgrow an accountant. They've helped you with this part of your business for so long, but now you're big time, and now you need to take it to another level, and they can't help you in that area. So I think 100%. I mean, you're not married to them, and again, you hired them. And if you're in there for a specific issue like depression and they've helped you through that, great. But if they're not very good at helping you with romantic relationships, move on. Like, why are you seeing them still? They're not, they're just like, oh yeah, honey, just be yourself. Just be yourself, honey. It's like, okay, they can't really help me with this. So that's just like, let me go find a marriage and family therapist that helps people with relationships all day long that can help me with that.
Yeah.
And that's totally reasonable. You're not stuck with a therapist. And look, if they get their feelings hurt, that's not they're trained not to. And if they get their feelings hurt and take it personally, then good riddance. It's time to move on.
Yeah, that's
So
very interesting perspective on that one. Uh,
yeah.
Something else I want to have a chat about in the
Yeah.
greater context of mental health is this notion of interpersonal effectiveness. Now,
Hmm.
I've heard of it, have no idea what it is. So please, for my sake and the audience's sake, please do elaborate.
Okay. So kind of going back to that tennis court metaphor, right? Being in a situation that works and you're actually getting what you want and need out of a relationship, out of relationships in general. Like right now, I would say our interaction is working, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like we have a rhythm here. It doesn't seem like we're tense with each other, right? We're being effective interpersonally. So there's this idea of codependence where you are constantly pulling, you're constantly enabling another person. You're not really a self, right? And that's you're elusive. And then there's the other side of that, counter dependency, where you are that risk being too narcissistic, right?
Mm.
You're hyper independent, that you don't care about people's feelings, right? So one side, you don't care about people's feelings. The other side, you care about people's feelings so much that you put yourself on the back burner, right? We're trying to find this middle
Oh.
ground where we're interdependent, where we are balancing caring about others and also caring about ourselves, making sure that we have our bottom line. I'm not going to put up with this. However, I recognize that you have feelings and I care about you still. So I would start with that, just this understanding that the goal is interdependence, finding that fine line, that balance. And then getting what you want is so important. I mean, if you don't ask for it, asking you shall receive, as Jesus said, right? Like if you're
Mm.
not asking, then you won't get it. And so, and if you're trying to lay down some boundaries or some new ways of doing things or asking for a raise, and you don't know how to be effective interpersonally with another person, then no one's going to come and give you a Lamborghini, man. No one's going to come and no girl's going to come to your door and say, I'm your perfect girlfriend that you've been looking for. You got to learn how to ask for what you need, what you want, and be willing to grow with someone. Because even if you find the perfect girlfriend, you're going to have to know how to get what you want across time through honesty and through straightforwardness. And so one tool that I really, really love, and maybe we can put it in the description of this video or get a link or something to the PDF of this, is called the acronym of DEARMAN. And not Dear Man, but DEARMAN, like DEARMAN. And maybe it'd be helpful if I walk through this right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So DEARMAN stands for describe, express, assert, reinforce, stay mindful, appear confident, and negotiate. So the first part of the D is describe the situation. Express is expressing how I feel. A is assert. So I'm going to assert what I want. I would like blank. R is the reinforcement, the positive reinforcement for delivering what I want, or the negative reinforcement for not delivering what I want. The M is mindful, stay mindful, be mindful of attacks. People will start attacking you when you ask for what you want sometimes, or be a broken record. No matter what they say, go back to the A. Don't get lost in the weeds. They'll try to distract you, get you off course. Go back to the cert. I would like blank. And then the A after mindfulness or mindful is appear confident. Don't be looking at your feet when you ask for something that you need. Even if you have to fake it, stand up straight. And then N, be willing to negotiate. Depends on what it is, of course, but be willing to negotiate. So I have a boss that's in fact, let's role play this. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, this will be fun. Never done this in a podcast.
Okay. So I'm your employee, you're my employer. Just berate me, please.
Colt, I think you're useless, and I'm on the verge of firing you.
Okay. So this is how I'm going to handle this. And I want you to be kind of a pest about this. Don't just roll over for me. Okay, Jonathan?
Okay.
So you just said that's my boss. Boss, you are yelling at me. So the first thing I did was I just described, right? I
Yeah.
didn't go into my whole. In fact, let's hold off the role playing real quick. Let me explain this.
Yeah.
So on Describe, I don't go on this whole tangent about like when my dad yelled at me and called me useless, why that sucks and why this is triggering me. No. Don't do that. Don't do any childhood bullshit. Nothing. Just describe the situation.
Yeah.
Boss, you're yelling at you're demeaning me right now.
Yeah.
Period.
I feel like it. And I think I'm entitled to do it. I'm your boss.
Hold off on the role playing real quick. I
Yeah.
just want to explain this real quick. Sorry,
Yeah.
I got ahead of myself on the role play.
Yeah. No
And then
worries.
what I would go to, and then when I would go to the express, I would say like just how I feel. I feel
Yeah.
hurt, right?
Yeah.
And then the A is like I would like blank, and then the reinforce negotiate, right? So anyway, yeah,
Okay.
let's start with the role playing. So go ahead and say it again.
Say it again. Colt, I think you're useless and I don't like you and I'm on the verge of firing you.
Boss, I wow, you're speaking to me in a very demeaning way. I feel pretty uncomfortable about that. I would like you to tell me what you need moving forward and not demean me. If you can do that, I think I'd be a really much more effective worker here and I'd get you what you want. And also, I'd love continue working here. Can you do that?
Well, I'm your boss and you know what I say goes and I still don't like you.
Um, Boss, I would like that you would tell me what your standards are so I can adhere to them. And I would like that you didn't talk to me in a demeaning way. Can you do that?
Um well, my standards you can't meet them and I'm your boss. I can speak to you whatever way I like.
Boss, I'd appreciate it if you could tell me what your standards are so I could adhere to them because I'd love to do that. And I'd appreciate if you didn't talk demeaning to me anymore. Can you do that?
I'm sorry, dude. That's so disarming. Like it's really hard to be nasty to you.
No, it's okay.
That's
So,
really cool.
do you see how I keep going back to that assert?
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like you could even start saying something like, did you watch the game last night? Okay, cool, Colt. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, you suck. But did you watch the game last night, Colt? Yeah, wasn't that great? Boss, I did watch the game. But anyway, we were talking about this. I would like you to speak to me in a respectful way and just tell me what your standards are so I can adhere to them. Can you do that? You just keep going back. Become a broken record. This
Yeah.
works wonders. This works so many wonders, man. It's amazing how effective people are when they can just learn to repeat themselves. It sounds so because we get so easy off track when we're in an interpersonal relationship. There's so much anxiety there. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
so we can get pulled off track easily. What is the outcome that I want? Always remind yourself, what is the outcome I want? I want to be spoken to in a respectful manner and I want to know what the standards are. Okay. Right. Or maybe the outcome is I want to raise. I want to get paid $30 an hour in US dollars. Okay, that's my outcome. That's my outcome. Well, call this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. Maybe it's not fair. Oh, I get it. Can I get a raise? I would like a raise of $30 an hour. The raise of 30. Just keep coming back. You
Yeah.
keep coming back. No matter what they say, you validate them. You're not being a smartass. You don't ignore what they say. In fact, they might even say, well, you're not performing at the level that we want you to. You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm not performing at the level you want me to. And I definitely like to work on that. Anyway, I would like a raise of $30 an hour. Can you do that? So you don't even argue. You just validate and you ignore attacks. You keep on
Yeah.
going.
Man, where was this when I was in school?
I know, right? Dear
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, dear man, I will. I'm gonna write the acronym down at the end of this episode. That's fantastic. So,
Yeah.
I don't know if if in the process of this you've probably already answered it with the acronym of dear man, but I love the comparison you made between like being narcissistic to the point of I don't care what you think and
Mm-hmm.
and putting your own mental health and your own self on the back burner at the
Dignity.
yeah, and dignity and self-respect for the sake of
Yeah.
pleasing others and making sure others are happy.
Mm-hmm.
How can we practice or what habits can we do or what can we train ourselves to do in such a way that we get into that nice middle ground. Like we find that balance on interpersonal effectiveness. We'll obviously swing every so often too far left, too far right, but how do we recalibrate ourselves and get back to that sweet spot of interpersonal effectiveness?
My mentor, she's rather religious, and she says, "Nobody but my Lord Jesus Christ can be right there in the middle." And so unless you're Jesus, I guess it's kind of hard. No, I think it's just self-awareness and being very honest with yourself and finding people that you can actually trust, because you don't want to be asking feedback from Joe across the street when they're probably just going to give you, I don't know. Find people that you actually trust that can let you know and give you feedback. Because a lot of times when I'm being independent and when I'm caring for myself and not being too codependent, people can get upset about that. But really, I'm being healthy. But people can be upset that I'm not like being codependent like them. So that's
Mm,
that's that's feedback you don't really want to listen to. And then sometimes, obviously, if everyone's used to you being kind of like this narcissistic asshole, um, and you start trying to find the middle ground, they're like, well, who's going to lead us now? Someone's got to like hold the line and be a jerk. We're used to you being an asshole. Come on, be that jerk, like, you know.
yeah.
So be the guy that doesn't care about anyone's feelings. So it's hard to find people that can really give you clear feedback. And at the end of the day, it's you that has to be honest with you, and because you're constantly trying to figure out what is going to work for me, what doesn't work for me, right? We got to keep that line clear. We got to know like where's my bottom line. And then as we figure out what our bottom line is, it's a process and we're constantly evolving as humans. Like what was yesterday's amazing insight could be tomorrow's bullshit. It's like what was my thing today that was important to me. As I've matured, I've realized, that's not as important to me as it used to be. So it's this process of maturation and growing and being willing to be open and all those things. And then trying to, I guess I would say it's this: find people that you can trust, be honest with yourself, journal, and there's no real magic pill here with that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I like what you said there in that there's no magic pill, there's no silver bullet. It's just hard
No.
work, but it's you that's got to do the hard work. You got to take personal responsibility. And I also like what you said with the example of the narcissist, and suddenly you do suddenly move into the middle ground, and people are like, well, we need a leader and we need that. And I feel that comes full circle back to an earlier part of the episode of growing out of the old roles that you had become accustomed to, certainly in like either a dysfunctional family or a functional family, but you had a role, and
Yep.
suddenly you've realized that the role you're in is causing very negative effects on
Hmm.
your life. And that's great if you suddenly do recognize, right, I need to change. And it's part of that moving to the middle ground is part of
Hmm.
your evolution, to become a better person. And I like what you said. You were quite truthful there, and that there will be pushback because people, I think, don't like change. Even if you're, pardon the French, an asshole, people are
Hmm.
familiar with you being an asshole. So it's like, well,
Hmm.
oh, actually, he's crap. He's changed. So this makes me feel uncomfortable. He's being nicer
Yeah.
to me, but this is a change that I'm uncomfortable with. It's weird, and there's always going to be pushback regardless. And I really
Yes.
like that example you said. Um, uh, but something that I also want to have a chat about, and that is that for a lot of this conversation, we've talked about what people have done to us, and I'm not, taking away, the weight of that. People have done things to me, undoubtedly to you. Everybody has had something terrible done to them at the hands of somebody else. But then I feel that we end up becoming our own worst enemy. Like we become our own worst critic. So how do you get out of your own way once the bullies have gone, once the toxic relationship has ended, once you are independent, and independent, but that be be your own person in the relationship, even if you're in a relationship. But how do you get out of your own way once the trauma or the abuse stops or whatever? How do you get out of your own way and on your ways to healing?
Do you mind providing me an example?
So for example, someone who is say badly bullied in school, let's say,
Okay.
right? So they leave school, but they no longer have physical contact with the bullies. But because they've
Hmm.
been bullied for years, they've been conditioned to believe that certain things about themselves or to behave in a certain way. And so they're no longer part of that toxic environment, but they're bringing the environment with them. So how do
Yes.
you so you don't need a bully. And in a weird way, you're your own bully because you tell
Yes.
yourself negative things about you. You say, I'm an idiot, or I'm useless, or what's the point of me even being here, or insert
Yes.
insert self-critical thought. How
Yes.
do you
So
get
that
out how do you get out of your own way?
okay, I got it. So this is great. This I love this, and my answer is metaphors. I use metaphors all the time. Some of the greatest teachers in history use metaphors and parables and analogies, right? So I think what I would do is used first of all is the my bus metaphor. So you're driving around. You're the driver of your bus, right? And you have all these passengers on your bus. The bullies aren't really around anymore, but the bullies of your conditioning are. They're still in your head, right? And I use that as the you're trying to drive your way through life and trying to get to the areas of your life that you want to get to. And these passengers on your bus are just like, you're a piece of crap, you're ugly, you're not worthwhile, you'll never do anything right. And you know, you're constantly letting them berate you and distract you from driving, right? And so, or you try to kick them off your bus, but the problem with that is that they get back on the next stop, right? And they say, go left, go right, go straight, right. And then you're still, so you're either fighting with them constantly, which doesn't help you drive to where you want to go, or you're constantly um, obeying them. And do you have a book with you by chance? I'm going to do something here.
I do actually have a book from a good friend of
Yeah.
mine. Yep.
Okay. So people on the podcast aren't going to hear this, but people on YouTube are going to see this, right?
Yeah.
So this is what we do all the time. Let's call it what do you want to call it? Social anxiety when it comes to bullies, right?
Yeah, okay. Let's call it that.
Yeah. So this is what we try to do. Sometimes we try to fight it, right? We try to push that away from us. If you take that
Yeah.
book, you push that away from you with both hands, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you just push, push, push. Come on, Jonathan, push harder, man. Push that book away from you. Come on, man, get rid of that thing.
That hurts.
Eventually your arms get tired, right? It's
Oh yeah.
tiring. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So then we're like, okay, I'm not going to fight these bullies in my head anymore. I'm not going to fight these problems, this depression in my head anymore. And then we give into it. So put that book in front of your face.
Yeah.
And how's the view, Jonathan?
This, quite frankly, it's terrible.
Yeah, you just give into the bullies and you just start beating yourself up. You're either fighting it or you're giving into it. Fighting
Yeah.
it, giving into it. And those solutions, you can keep doing that. And some people are pretty good at fighting um, those things that keep getting in their way, or they just give back into them, and that sucks too. My solution is let's take this with us, put that book underneath your arm.
Yeah.
It's probably not going anywhere. Like I said, we're getting stronger in the context of our conditioning. We're not trying to get rid of our conditioning. If you get rid of your conditioning, great. I recommend if you're going to get rid of your conditioning, it's because you hold that thing and you go in the direction regardless. Those passengers on your bus, they're probably not going anywhere. In fact, they're gonna, hey, you, thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing, swipe left. Thanks for sharing, swipe left. Thanks for
Mm-hmm.
sharing, brain. Thanks for sharing. And so my solution is again exposure therapy, like the snake. You start taking baby steps towards things that are important to you, and you have accountability. You have people that can help you do that, and you take baby steps across time, and you recognize that it's probably not a great idea to fight those bullies in my head, even though the bullies aren't really out here anymore. They're still in my head. the stepdad, right, is constantly continuing to berate me. Okay, I hear you. I know you think this is safe to stay in this normal bully myself area. Appreciate you. And I'm going to march forward. I'm gonna go left when you've been telling me to go right. I'm gonna go right when you've been telling me to go left. I'm gonna go in the direction that matters to me. So again, no silver bullet here, but I would really encourage that people use that metaphor to start watching and diffusing from their mind, from their conditioning, and watch that conditioning, right? Oh, there you are again. Hello, darkness, my old friend. There it is. And now that I notice it, I can carry it instead of fighting it, giving into it, and do what matters one day at a time.
That's really powerful. Yeah. I was wondering where we were going with the book and the phone and the pushing the bullies away and then putting there, but that's really, really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something everybody can use between DearMan and that. That's really, really good.
Yeah. And that whole idea of remember I was talking about the star going in
Yeah,
the direction of east. That's why that's so important. Because if I accept that this may not go away, the thing I've been trying to push away or thing I give into, if I just
yeah.
hold this, I can hold it and go in the direction that matters.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
See, this is the type of thing where I really needed in school. Just one lesson a week, and like here's how to like really take care of your mental health. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's better to learn it now than never.
Yeah.
Um, so we've been chatting for some time, and the overarching theme of today that I'm getting, but also that I've heard about in circles, is that of psychological flexibility. Um,
Yes.
and again, glad you're here because I know very little on the subject. But to me, that sounds great. Being flexible and adaptable to, whatever life throws your way. So, can you just touch a bit more on psychological flexibility?
Yeah, it's been the theme of this whole talk. I mean, we've been talking about doing what works. So I have 4 questions that I typically ask people to help them do what works. Because a lot of times our life isn't working and we don't know why. And it helps us to break it down. So psychological flexibility at the end of the day is feeling the fear and doing it anyway, doing the things that work that are outside of our conditioning. So the 4 questions are, the first one is, one, what is important to you? What would make your life meaningful? What is something that just would make you come alive, or at least would make you feel like your life is worth living, right? And let's say that is, should I do this? Yes, I will. So let's say that's this direction, right? What's important to me, right? That's number one. Second question is over here, and that's in the direction of what doesn't work for you. That's on the right side for those who are listening, right? So the second question is, what thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, AKA private experiences, Jonathan, that only you know of, because it's your private experiences, keep you from doing what's important? That first question over here.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's, I'm not good enough. I'm not able. Um, I'm scared, whatever it is, right? So those private experiences, I'm depressed, right? And so that's question 2. And then question 3, which is over here still on the right side, which is going in the direction of what you don't want. The third question is, what things do you do to try to get rid of those private experiences? And a lot of times we drink, we look at porn, we procrastinate, we do anything that we can do, watch Netflix all day long to numb out from the anxiety that comes with doing what's important for us. So I know this thing over here is meaningful for me. Starting a podcast, right? And over here, I feel unworthy. I feel like no one would listen to it, right? And then to avoid doing, to numb those feelings, those anxieties, I overeat, I drink, I procrastinate, right? And then the fourth question over here on top of the direction where we're going on
Hmm.
the left is, obviously those behaviors don't work. those behaviors of numbing out don't work to get you where you want to go. They certainly work in numbing you out. They work in helping you not feel the discomfort of life. That's 100% true. But do they work on getting you closer to what you want? No. So what behaviors can I do one day at a time to get me to where I want to go? Right. And so this is psychological flexibility. Like, okay, I work on my podcast and the marketing 2 hours a day. That's a behavior that I can do and quantify. And those are my tactics that I can do. It's not too much. It's not too little. And I can do that one day at a time. And that's psychological flexibility, because we have this idea in our head that, okay, I want to start a podcast, for instance, but I have to feel comfortable first. I have to have all my feelings in a row. I have to believe in myself. No, you don't. Because people all the time have all those doubts and have all those ways they can numb those doubts out. But they decide, you know what? I'm not going to make those things drive my bus. I'm not going to allow those things to run my life. I can watch them. I can decide not to numb them out. I can decide to refocus and do the things that matter. And then a lot of times, if there's an overarching fifth question that encapsulates all that, what is that like? What is that experience like? It's scary. And I get stronger in the process. So that's psychological flexibility in a nutshell. I don't know if that made sense because I didn't have a paper in front of me. I kind of went through it in that way, but I think the overall arching idea made sense, I hope.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. And I really liked one particular part of that where you said people feel like they have to have all their feelings in a row and they have to feel like they're ready, like they're not scared to do something, insert scary situation. When I feel brave or when I feel, ready to do it, I'll do it. You know, I can preach from experience here. I have never felt ready to start a podcast. I'm still winging.
Right?
I'm still winging it totally. You know, and I still get nervous every time I go for a chat with people, even if it's friends I've known. I was chatting with my co-host yesterday, and I've known him for 10 years, but because it's now he's agreed to come on my podcast, I felt nervous. I was like, why am I feeling nervous chatting to my friend? And it's like, well, I did it anyway
Yes.
because it's growing. I'm getting stronger, more confident podcasting and growing as a person as well. And that bit there, you just hit the nail on the head so well with that. People feel like they have to have it all figured out. People feel like they have to be in a certain mindset, like they have to feel a certain way, and they're waiting for perfection. It's like, no, don't do that. Take messy action, and like the
Yes.
results are just going to be incredible. So yeah,
Yes.
that's man. I've really I really really enjoyed this chat. I've got a lot out of it, I must admit,
Yeah.
and I know the audience will too.
I want to say one
Unfortunately,
more thing on that. That's
oh,
okay.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It was just around this idea of psychological flexibility. It's like, man, this is a choice at the end of the day. This is a choice because I'm choosing to do what works. I'm choosing to do the podcast anyway. Courage is a choice. It's not a feeling. Like, I'm choosing to act in a courageous way because I don't feel like I'm enough. I feel scared. I feel nervous. Okay. Well, you know what? I'm not going to choose to drink over it or to play video games and numb myself out. I'm going to choose to do the thing that matters. And that's the hero's journey. So just wanted to
Yeah,
say that.
I, I absolutely love that. That is such a good way to end this episode. That's almost perfect.
Yeah.
Folks, I know you'll have enjoyed this episode, but do get in contact on social media and let us know what you love the most about it. And uh, you know, tell us, what you're going to do now with this information. Tell us, how you're going to get stronger. And we covered so much in this incredible conversation that with Colt coming on at least once a quarter in the future, you know, is there something in particular you would like us to do a deep dive on, or is there a part of this topic that you wish to see discussed? It's an entirely new topic. um I'm looking forward to all the conversations we're going to have on this, quite frankly. So yes, folks, you can look forward to more of these conversations, and thank you very much for tuning in. And once again, Colt, thanks a million for coming on. I mean, that was just an incredible conversation, and
Yeah, man.
yeah, I look forward to to several conversations we're going to have in the future, especially on mental health. I mean, from doesn't matter whether you're a kid just leaving at 18, leaving school at 18, or whether you're, retired and, stuck somewhere and feeling lonely, and, insert every circumstance and age in between of those two examples. We all need to take care of our mental health. And I think you're going to go a long way in helping at least my audience achieve that goal. Before we do go, folks, I do have to um, ask Colt that if they've enjoyed the content, which I'm sure they have, where can they find more of it and all your content?
I have a podcast called Colt Gordon Podcast, just my name, ColtGordon. And I talk about healthy relationships. I talk about overcoming PTSD, eating disorders, addictions, and everything we talked about right now. Psychological flexibility, doing what matters, choosing to do what matters. And I have an Instagram, essentially just for my podcast called, you can find me at Colt.Gordon is my Instagram name. So that is how you can find me. And I also do coaching as well. So please reach out.
There you go, folks. I can thoroughly recommend that podcast as well. It's really nice to listen to, and especially if you're having a bad day and then Colt comes on and gives some therapy wisdom, and you're like, oh, all is well in the world. So yeah, so Colt, thanks again so much for coming on this podcast, and thank you for agreeing to be a repeat guest as well. I look forward to the conversations we're going to have in the future.
Jonathan Bell, thank you so much.